We are Geekcentric, and you can be too. Love ya. Get home safe, guys. Peace.
What's up, geeks, and welcome back to another episode of the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Justin, and today we're doing things a little bit differently. For today's episode, there won't be any whatcha, no news, no trailer, but all topic. Today's episode is part one of a two-part series where we're taking an in-depth look at the work of Christopher Nolan. But first, if you're joining us for the first time, this is a weekly podcast covering the world of film, television, gaming, toys, collectibles, and all things geek-centric. Joining me as always, we have Nate Shelton and Kevin Hudson, and I think we skip the pleasantries and get right into it.
It's time for the topic of the show.
So for today's topic of the show, we thought we would continue with our director special by taking an in-depth look at the films of Christopher Nolan. Recently, it was announced that Tenet, Nolan's 11th film, and probably one of the most anticipated films of 2020, is finally hitting theaters here in Canada as of August 27th after being delayed by the ongoing events of COVID-19. Needless to say, this has got us excited, and we thought it would be a perfect time to take a look at his filmography from the last 22 years. Now, to give you guys a little bit more background information, Christopher Edward Nolan, born July 30th, 1970, and apparently he recently celebrated his 50th birthday, was raised in London and developed an interest in filmmaking at a young age. After studying English literature in university, he made his feature debut with Following in 1998. Nolan gained international recognition with his second film, Memento, in 2000, for which he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. He transitioned from independent to studio filmmaking with Insomnia in 2002, and found further critical and commercial success with the Dark Knight trilogy between 2005 and 2012. However, in between that trilogy, he also found time to make The Prestige in 2006 and Inception in 2010. After the Dark Knight trilogy, he would go on to make Interstellar in 2014 and Dunkirk in 2017, the latter of which earned him Academy Award nominations for Best Picture and Best Director. I'm excited to dive into some Nolan films.
Oh, yeah.
I've been a fan. I think, personally speaking, he's probably my most favorite film director. So I thought we would start right at the beginning with his first theatrical release in 1998 called Following. Following is an independent neo-noir sort of crime thriller written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It tells a story of a young man who follows strangers around the streets of London and is drawn into the criminal underworld when he fails to keep his distance. This film was actually done with a $6,000 budget. Probably one of the lowest budget films to actually get a theatrical release. This movie took him about a year to actually piece together. He shot it on 16 millimeter film. So it's a real gritty sort of black and white, very textural sort of aesthetic. But it took him a year to put this together, and it was really just to kind of deal with the ongoing, like the various schedules of people that were involved in the film. But yeah, guys, either of you guys checked this film out?
I have not seen this yet.
I watched a trailer for it, and it looked intriguing, but not enough to me that I was gonna run out and go to the theater to watch it. But no, it's definitely like noir. Right? Like it's all black and white. At no point in time does it go color, right?
No, yeah, it's entirely black and white. And like the noir aesthetic is obviously the physical look of it, but it's also like the sort of the dark shadows, the mystery, the sort of crime thriller aspect of it. So it very much leans on that, sort of adopting a lot of that. I actually checked this film out. This is obviously Nolan's first film, but also his first sort of experiment at fragmented narratives. Which would become obviously a distinct style in his storytelling. The movie itself serves as an example of what can be achieved with a good story and a clear vision of a filmmaker versus big budget and star power, and also having just studio backing. For his first real movie with such a small budget, it's actually really, really good. Like I enjoyed it. I thought it was actually like there's certain moments that feel very student film. But if this is a student film, this is probably the best student film, and it has been celebrated as one of his, prime examples of him being the filmmaker that he is now.
It's interesting because I'm looking at the cast list here, and I'm not seeing any names I recognize except
there's
for
nobody other than his bro,
John Nolan, right?
Yeah.
No, John
which
Nolan's
I was like,
actually not Jonathan Nolan. It's actually an older gentleman. Yeah.
oh,
Interesting.
I thought it was okay. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
no, I know.
Is he related in any way?
I haven't actually looked, but no, it's an older gentleman who's a cop.
Then the only other name that I recognize is David Julian, which he's done a lot of the earlier Nolan scores. So he obviously likes to work with that guy. But it's interesting. I wonder if the cast here would maybe take me out a little bit, just because again I'm so used to seeing the big, crazy expensive casts that he normally puts in these films, right?
Right, exactly. But again, this is his first film. He did it on a very low budget, right? He was really trying to do it as a means that I feel like his ability of how he was able to translate what he studied in terms of English literature into filmmaking, because there are obviously a lot of parallels with that. I just think that now he was able to give more of a visual style to the way that he writes and how he uses the camera as very much the pen that he's writing and telling the story with. There's just interesting parts to it where you really do get to see a sense of early Nolan-esque styles, like the fragmented narrative. You're seeing things before they've happened, and then they come to sort of like an intersecting point where you realize the music, you called out the music serves a very integral part in terms of like a sense of urgency. But there's this mischievous sort of behavior to it, and a very two-sided sort of narrative to it. It's really good. I enjoyed it.
This doesn't seem like a movie I would watch, even as a big Nolan fan, even if Nolan was maybe if Nolan was like my all-time favorite director, I'd want to go out and check out. But,
sure.
The way you described it, I thought it was it's almost like a student film.
Yeah.
I don't need to go out and watch THX 1138. I know what it meant to George Lucas's career, but I'll wait till student work is good, but that's kind of like your resume, your application I'll wait till you're working the job before I check out, the work you do,
Right. So, and that's a great call out too. THX, George Lucas, what it did. I think you're safe to say that's exactly how you would look at, following as being attributed to his career.
Well, just in terms of critical reception, the film has an IMDb fan score of 7.5, which ranks it second lowest of all the Nolan films. It's got a Metacritic score of 60%, which is actually the lowest of all of his films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes score is 81%.
Mm-hmm.
So generally liked, but not maybe loved by the Rotten Tomato voters. That puts it at 6 out of 8 films. And then its Flickster fan score is at 85%, which again puts it lower down the list.
Right.
He's got some pretty high scores.
I can only imagine.
Both in Rotten Tomato and Flickster. So 85, while seemingly a good score, is right down there. I think it's the third lowest score his films have received. So.
I honestly, I would probably say that this is one of the low scoring ones personally.
Again, these are all good scores, so that's incredible to think this is such an early piece of his. Yeah. It's a $6,000 budget, and to still be received that well. Yep. It's almost like Christopher Nolan's worst film is still a great film, is essentially, what I'm sort of getting from all of this.
And enjoyable. Yeah. And I think that, it really played, to your point, Kevin, it was an audition. And I think it was an audition really for his next film that, he got the notoriety after following to actually go on and make, and that is Memento, released in 2000. Memento is, again, a very neo-noir psychological thriller directed by Christopher Nolan. Have you guys seen Memento?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I just watched it, actually.
Okay, so you just
as my watcha. Yeah, and I had no idea going into Memento anything about it. I'd never watched a trailer. Nobody's ever told me what it was. Mm-hmm. And wow, my experience was so much better, and it's just so fantastic because of the way that I again didn't know anything about it.
There's a lot of like the non-spoiler stuff that exists out there, and one of the big like things that they all seem to talk about is the parallel narratives that are running. And just to give people a foundation or a background to understand that there are, you know, two narratives that are kind of succinctly running here, to kind of create, you know, Nolan's very, very accomplished, fragmented narrative to his story. This is wholly original. Like in my opinion, like I think this, you know, especially in 2000, you know, seeing this film, it was such a breath of fresh air to see a movie that was entirely its own and original and had a very, very refined and focused view.
I've never seen a movie like this. I've never seen a structured narrative done, and we're just going to get the cat out of the bag here, done backwards. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of that film, I literally I started the film probably 3 times over to rewatch him messing with the photo and you know, shaking the Polaroid, because I was like, hold on a second, that's not how Polaroids work. Because it started undeveloping, right? And because it was going backwards, and like the moment you tune into that fact, which for me, which for pretty much everyone, I guess, what is just when everything starts moving backwards. But the moment that you tune into that, and then you start realizing that the whole movie is going in that direction, it floored me, man. That opening floored me.
That opening scene with the Polaroid, you know, that pretty much summarizes the entire movie. Not just from the perspective of talking about like the narrative running backwards, but in that opening scene with the shaking of the Polaroid and the image slowly disappearing, like this is so symbolic to how the movie is, and in many ways what Leonard deals with, are the protagonists played by Guy Pearce, who did a phenomenal job. You know, that disappearing of the image from the Polaroid is very symbolic of this sort of condition that Leonard suffers from. And the whole movie itself kind of puts you in the same sort of place with how you're experiencing things backwards and maybe forwards at the same time. Like it's very disjointed. He has such a way with how he structured the story to put the viewer in the same place as Leonard with his own memory loss, right? So I thought that was very crafty. You know, has a very multi-level to why that narrative worked so well.
So now, this wasn't the first thing to be done in reverse order. You know, you have Adam McGoyan's The Sweet Hereafter in 1997. It plays very much in reverse chronological order. Really? There was even a film in 1927 that had many sequences that were in reverse order as an attempt to try something new and try to, you know, disorient the viewer. There's a Czech film called Happy End in 1966. I mean, even the Seinfeld episode, what's it called again? The Betrayal is an episode done entirely backwards. But it's never been done this well. It's never been done this just brilliantly well, you know? And while those were sort of done in reverse order as a means of doing something differently, it was entirely a narrative structure that Nolan's using in this. You know, it's not just as a stunt, it's to tell the story a certain way. And I think that's what makes it so successful when he did it.
It actually started feeling like a video game. You know what I mean? And I know I talk about video games a lot, but like just in the sense of like all of the different objects that he had. And we would go back, and then, you know, you would see the next thing that you would see was, okay, that's how he got the suit. That's how the window broke. That's how, you know, so I just felt I'd never really experienced anything like that. And
well, it's almost like he's a video game character in that it's like, would you like to restart, right? And
yes.
Then he's trying again, right? And
yeah. Oh, dude, it's so fantastic. My only gripe with it was I think they should have gone with Brad Pitt instead of Guy Pearce, because I think he would have been a much better. I think he would have done a better job, but I don't know.
Guy Pearce Guy Pearce was fantastic in this film. He has such a natural presence to Leonard. Like he from the way he delivers his lines to those silent moments where his facial expression can do so much. Like he really brought Leonard to life by fully believing his ambitions and drive and what he was wanting to achieve. So it's like Guy Pearce, like he did an outstanding job. And I think the film itself, this will become an ongoing theme as we get deeper into Nolan's films, but this being the first sort of element of again, great storytelling, and then it's amplified by really great performance. As we were talking, Following kind of felt like a student film, and that might have been because of the sort of mediocre at time sort of performances from some of the actors that were in it. When you have someone seasoned like Guy Pearce who just, fully believes this role, it was, very well done on the part of what he was able to achieve. But, Kevin, as you were mentioning before, things being done before in terms of in reverse, I think that's obviously a very good point. But I think the other thing that really helps with this is that you have two narratives, one running backwards, one running forwards. And it is actually that intersection where they come together that really brings it all together. It's not just a story backwards, because you actually had two narratives to follow.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
working
definitely
together. Yeah.
Exactly. Kev, what was the Metascores? You got some stats there for us?
So now, I guess for anybody who's seen the movie and is a Nolan fan, this is almost, once you've seen it, it becomes almost one of the first things you think of when you think of Christopher Nolan. And the scores certainly reflect that. I was a little surprised by the IMDb score. It's at an 8.4. So it's right around the middle of the pack, lower end of the middle of the pack. So not nearly as high as I thought. But now you go to the Metascore, and it's a solid 80%, the second highest ranked on the snobby critics, as I like to call them. And then you go to the more commercial critical view in Rotten Tomato. It's at 93%, so the second highest rated. And then you go to the Flickster audience score. So I guess that's what, the less snobby fans? No, that's the fans don't work the same as the critics do between IMDb and Rotten Tomato or Flickster. But no, it's got a Flickster audience score of 94%, which is the highest rated. Wow. So it's certainly, it's one of his best received both critically and with audiences, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that goes.
Even though I bet you so many of those audience members didn't see it when it first came out. Right. I mean, I didn't see this until probably after, something like The Prestige. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was a long time after that I saw it. So I'm sure that. So I think this has become such almost a cult classic, a beloved film that people have found later on in Nolan's career. It wasn't like an instant success. And I mean, that's also because it was an indie film, so it probably the release was probably very, very small, very limited.
Right.
So
it was very festival driven. So the release was entirely festival driven. It got nominated for a variety of different awards, including original screenplay. He was acknowledged by the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild. So the movie itself in Hollywood did what it was meant to do for Nolan's career, is establish him as a very competent, focused, and in many ways driven filmmaker. And this would then be the experience for Nolan to now jump into the Hollywood system. So with this film under his belt, he would then transition into the next film that we are going to talk about, which is called Insomnia. And this is from 2002. Insomnia is a murder mystery that stars Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank. Takes place in Alaska, where in a specific city, I can't remember the name right now, but the sun does not set, adding to the insomnia feel of this movie. Just a little bit of background as well, as we were talking about Memento, Steven Soderbergh was behind Insomnia and getting it pushed through, distributed through Warner Brothers, and his production company was involved. And he really pushed for Christopher Nolan to direct Insomnia after seeing Memento. So again, Memento did exactly what it was meant to do. It put Nolan on the map, and here he comes being able to direct a murder mystery that is starring some serious star power, right? Like, it has some serious star power to it. But have either of you guys checked this movie out?
I'm almost positive I actually saw this in theaters.
Right.
Now, I didn't know it was a Christopher Nolan film, obviously, when I saw it, because who the heck was Christopher Nolan, right? And I just wasn't in my film watching stage to sort of either enjoy or appreciate what was going on here. It just really wasn't my type of movie at that time, But hey, that Al Pacino guy, and man, I love Robin Williams. Let's go check out this movie. And so that wasn't the right attitude to go in to see this one with. So it was certainly not one of my favorites at the time, and I have not gone back to watch it since. So I feel, who knows where I would rank this overall in a Nolan, top films or anything like that. But that's just the memory I have of it.
Yeah, I had seen it a long time ago. I didn't rewatch it in anticipation for this podcast, like I did with Following and Memento. But I had seen this movie twice because I was, to your point, Kevin, very shocked. That being said, so a couple things that I remember from watching it is what starts to be like a murder mystery then ends up being like a tug of war battle of like wills between like Pacino and Williams, just the because it seems very cut and dry, right? Like, Nate, you recently watched it, right?
Yeah, I watched it. I actually watched it just before I watched Memento, because I thought going into it, I've heard, like, the only thing that I did hear about Memento was just how phenomenal it was, and I hadn't really heard the same praise for Insomnia. So I thought, well, I'll watch Insomnia first to get it out of the way. Yeah, dude, honestly, it was fantastic because I knew it was a Nolan film going in. I recognized certain things. It's interesting that we're seeing him go from, a slow-paced noir film to a slow-paced noir film with some weird time stuff to another slow-paced detective film with some time stuff. And, it sort of feels like he's got his own theming going on so far. But, going into it, like, immediately you can tell it's a Nolan film. The airplane intro with the swelling music coming in, like, it was... The way it was shot, I think he captured Night Mute, Alaska, really, really well. And what a name for a small fishing village in Alaska, Night Mute, to go along with this movie, right? Yeah. So super cool stuff. I found that I've never really watched Al Pacino before, so... That was interesting. You guys are probably gonna, again, it's all the movies Nate hasn't seen. I've really not watched any Al Pacino stuff, so he was great, but he was totally outacted in my opinion. I think Robin Williams, just the moment he's introduced, which takes, in my mind, because I wanted to see Robin Williams on the screen again because I just miss him so much. It took too long to get to him, but I did think the buildup was really good. But when we do get to him, he just steals it so well. Like, he's so phenomenal. So yeah, dude, I enjoyed it. But the only issue that I had with it really was just that, again, it for me, it didn't feel Nolan enough. It didn't feel big spectacle enough. And again, this is me coming at it from a standpoint of I've never watched Memento. I never watched his first film. Yeah. So I'm wanting these big, massive set pieces that we're used to now with Nolan, right? Yeah. So that could just be me coming at it from that bias. But for me, this really didn't kick it too well. And I don't know. I think it's probably the weakest one that I would say, for me at least.
Well, and from what I can remember, it's almost the most straightforward or paint by the numbers in terms of narrative that he, outside of the Batman, more franchised sort of storytelling. This is very much just a typical Hollywood sort of thriller or whatever genre you want to kind of.
He plays with the Insomnia feel, right? So like the title Insomnia kind of serves as like a manifestation of kind of Pacino's guilt that he deals with in this film, as well as the idea of obviously the murder taking place in a city where the sun doesn't set. So it's just an added layer. And with that, you have these sort of very, like, is it real? Is it not real? Is it in his head? Things that would happen in terms of like, and that's why the editing was very, very fast and like quick shots of things, or, close-ups of like the eyes and then like coming back, like just to kind of really capture. So there is this sort of like a little bit of displacement, but at the same time, it is, to your point, Kev, very, very linear. But he does try to play around, I think, with it, in terms of like experiencing, like, is this real? Is this a memory? Did this happen? Did this not happen? Kind of thing.
I did also relate. You mentioned Pacino's character, his guilt. in the sense, I get a Will Dormer, how he kills
His
Eckhart,
partner,
right? He kills his partner, and it's interesting. I did really enjoy the fact that it plays with that idea of, was it a mistake or was it not? Was he a killer?
And that's the beauty of this film, is that it does start off like a very murder mystery sort of thing, but then the cop that's doing the investigating suddenly becomes the person that has committed an act, and the murderer that they're following is the witness that had seen him, right? So it's like it really plays into, like, now Al Pacino's out to get Williams, but Williams has one up on Pacino because he knows he actually shot his partner. So I think it's actually a very underrated movie. Like, again, it's probably not one of his best, but it's still, in many ways, I think the craft of Nolan's storytelling is upped. Once again, as well, it gives he gives the audience information while also leaving things kind of like up in the air. But yeah, it is another example of really good storytelling with, fantastic performances to kind of go with it and to help elevate that story.
Well, I know we've kind of been talking about it, right? Like this really fun progression of Nolan's career from like student film essentially to the indie game, and now here he is in the big time, the Hollywood blockbuster-esque type of film. But I don't think this one really stands out on his filmography as much as it does Robin Williams, because that was such an interesting time in his career. Like 2002 was an absolutely insane year for Robin Williams. Everybody everybody loves him, and the guy who's known for making you laugh had this turn where he kind of almost tried to reinvent himself in his career, and he went super dark. He had 1 Hour Photo, which is like a borderline slasher, like it's that psychological, very, very dark movie. Really he did Death to Smoochie, which is as black a comedy as you can get. Like, it's just there. And then, to top it off with Insomnia, like 2002 was just such a wild little blip in Robin Williams' sort of filmography that I find that is almost more significant of the film than it be, like, other than it being Nolan's first foray into a full budget sort of big time theatrically released movie. So that's what I sort of get out of it more than anything. Now, in terms of the rankings here, this is actually maybe one of the most fascinating movies, because general audiences did not receive this film very well. It got a 7.2 on an IMDb film score. Again, still not a super low score, but that is the lowest of the Nolan movies, a 7.2 IMDb, and also a 77% Flickster score, which is, again, the lowest of all the Nolan movies. Right. But the critics really liked it. It received a 78% versus 80% for Memento, right? So for Metacritic. It got a 92% on Rotten Tomato versus a 93% for Memento. So it's right there at third or fourth in the Metacritic scores and Rotten Tomato scores. So again, a critical darling, but not as well received by audiences. So
interesting. Well, I'm sure the next film that we're going to talk about was well received. This is Batman Begins from 2005. But before we get to his next film, I wanted to give you guys a little fun fact. This is what as I was reading and kind of learning more about Nolan. He was attached to do a Howard Hughes movie after Insomnia that he wrote, which he has dubbed as like his best script ever. And guess who was going to play Howard Hughes?
Hugh Jackman.
No, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. Oh, yeah.
Jim Carrey as Howard Hughes. So I thought
there's
that was
Jim
great.
Carrey's elusive Oscar.
Right? That's what I said.
He never even had a chance to win it. Yeah.
If you have Nolan saying like it was probably one of his best scripts he's ever written, like I want to know if that movie could potentially get made. Maybe not with Jim Carrey now, but that would have been great. But anyways, he did not end up doing that movie because obviously Scorsese was doing Aviator, I believe it was called, with Leo.
Right,
so
and that would have been right around the same time, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So in 2003, after obviously doing Insomnia with Warner Brothers, Nolan approached Warner with the idea of making a Batman film. Fascinated by the character and the story, he wanted to make a film grounded in a relatable world, more reminiscent of a classical drama than the typical comic book fantasy. Now, obviously, as we all know, Batman Begins is a story of how Bruce Wayne learns the ropes of being a ninja and becoming Batman, and literally the first part of a 3-part trilogy that we will obviously keep talking about in this. A couple quotes that I pulled from reviewers. Kyle Smith from the New York Post called it a wake-up call to all the people who keep giving us cute capers about men in tights. It wipes the smirk off the face of the superhero movie. I entirely agree with that. For the 10th anniversary, Forbes published an article describing its everlasting influence. Now, this I thought was really interesting because it really does make sense. Because of Batman Begins, reboot became one of our modern vocabulary words, and superhero origin stories became increasingly in style for the genre. The phrase dark and gritty likewise joined the cinematic language, influencing our perception of different types of approach to storytelling, not only in the comic book film genre, but in all sorts of genres. So this idea of dark and gritty, idea of rebooting, kind of all started with this. It kind of left a everlasting impression on superhero genre, as well as, impacting other genres. Now, I know you guys have seen this movie.
I might have seen it once. I don't even know if I've seen the whole thing, though. Yeah.
Sorry, I might have just seen the beginning.
Oh, get out of here.
Of
Cut
Batman.
his mic.
No, you know what? I really enjoy Batman Begins. I know that it definitely. We'll talk about Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, but just as a way to start off this fantastic trilogy of movies from a serious and grounded standpoint. Like all of the Batman films, and Justin, you were telling me you were watching some of the 90s Batman movies, sort of leading up to Batman Begins. We, as a theater-going audience, I don't think we'd ever seen anything like this, and I do think it had the potential, and unfortunately it didn't go that direction, but it had the potential to be the Iron Man for the DCU films, and obviously we didn't go that route.
Right, starting a
to start it off, right? Yeah, like imagine a DC cinematic universe in Nolan's DC cinematic universe.
What really stands out for me in terms of my memory of this movie is just, you got to think the last Batman movie we saw in theaters, or, before this, had nipples on the suits, and Batman had his credit card, and
bat cheeks.
Rock hard bat cheeks, and the bad guys walking around, like, doing silly ice puns and whatnot. And then even superhero movies, while Spider-Man certainly is a step above those Batman movies, that was sort of what we had in terms of superhero movies at the time, was the Spider-Man movies. And the level of just writing and direction and filmmaking that separates the Spider-Man movies from this movie. I was just like, I didn't know what to expect. I've always loved to go see the blockbusters in theaters, but I wasn't like, this is going to change everything. It was just, I'll go see a new Batman movie, sure. Yeah, and leaving that theater, it was just like, I couldn't believe how good it was. Not just as a superhero movie, but just as a good movie.
We saw it together, Kev. You, me, I think Danielle, our old friend Danielle, and a bunch of other people were there. I remember going into that theater, and I was so stoked because, like, at this point, I had known who Christopher Nolan was. I'd seen Memento, so I was very excited to see. I hadn't seen Insomnia. That one sneaked by me in 2005. But
I probably would have been less excited had I known it was by the guy who did that dreary Insomnia movie I saw a few years ago,
But I think, Kevin, it goes without saying, like, this movie was destined to be a superhero classic. The film delved deep into the origins of Batman, and not what we already know, but, how he becomes Batman. The film is 100%.
Yeah, like, unless you read the comics.
Yeah, of course. But
this was all new stuff.
In the comics, it's very, it's not as flushed out. I think there's parts of this origin story that comes from various parts in the comics. We never really get to see this side. With this film, Nolan 100% influenced the superhero genre. The film makes Bruce Wayne matter. Like, he actually makes Bruce Wayne. It's more about Bruce Wayne than it is about Batman, right? It's about how he becomes Batman. We see his relationships with his parents. We see his relationship with Alfred, and of course how he becomes this ninja detective. Nolan grounds this spectacle hero in realism and practicality while also making him transcend to the hero status. He also gave Wayne or Batman a moral compass that would inevitably become a huge part of the sequel. I think that Nolan nailed the Batman Begins by not incorporating a top tier villain like the Joker. He saved the Joker. This allowed the audience to buy in to Batman, to Gotham, to the characters of Gotham, really like sink in to that, and then take us into number 2, where we're introduced to that top tier villain, the one that's going to challenge him.
You said it. It's a Bruce Wayne movie, right? And very much, yes, this introduces the concept of Batman to Bruce Wayne, but to introduce Bruce Wayne to audiences in this way, I think is one of the biggest successes of this movie. If you told me that, do you want to watch a movie that does predominantly focus on not Batman, but his alter ego, I'd be like, nah, that doesn't sound exciting at all. But the way that it's done and the way that it's written, the character of Bruce and how he grows, and we get to obviously see him as a little kid. It's such a such a good exploration of that character, and I think that's good that we have the most of the Batman, I think, in Batman Begins, because I do think, as we're going to get into Dark Knight, that's going to focus obviously much more on the Joker.
That's a good point. I would also say, the anticipation of seeing him in the costume in Batman Begins is so much fun. Man. Like, you see all the training, you see all the stuff that goes through it, you see like the little hints of his costume, but then when he's on Falcone's car and pulls him up, I'm Batman, and he says the line, right? Like, you laugh, but then you applaud at the same time, because it's like the perfect point. You've reached that point of seeing him in his costume and all the work that he's done to get to be this character. It was a very one of those fist pumps in the air sort of moments, right?
Yeah, it could have been borderline campy, right?
Right.
And almost has become a joke in and of itself,
right.
But it was just so cool that it was like the right kind of just that kind of borderline jokey that you want in a movie.
Yeah.
That otherwise, I think they did dark so well. It was dark, but not brooding or dreary, or like some DC movies that tried to be dark, boring, right? This was still really fun, despite it having those grittier tones to the character.
Yeah.
And that balance is just so good. And just a quick shout to the Ra's al Ghul reveal, the twist there. That was just such a fun spin with Liam Neeson's character.
Liam Neeson, man.
You absolutely, Kev. I think that the balance of dark to give Batman, because he is that dark character, and I think this is obviously a film that Batman fans, graphic novel fans of Batman, have wanted to see, and this is obviously the closest, without going so dark that it's it's depressing. Right?
Yeah. It's not Joker dark.
Right. Absolutely.
And obviously I don't mean the character, but the movie.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that dark and.
Right. And not that dramatic as well. Right. There is a light tone, because obviously
it's still an adventure movie.
Exactly.
At the heart of it. An action but adventure movie that you go on with this character that just made it a lot of fun while being very serious.
And while he hits all those points in his character's journey, you are with him as he goes through that, and that's the adventure for me, at least. I think that seeing him reach these certain thresholds and points, and where he's back in Gotham and he's getting back into the swing of things, and discovering more. It's just it was such a well done movie, and a defining movie for the superhero genre.
Well, a quick shout here. I didn't think Katie Holmes was that bad at all. I had no problem with her portrayal as Rachel.
Do you know why she didn't come back? Apparently.
Was it something a bit more domestic for her?
I think so. I don't think Tom Cruise wanted her to.
Right. So it wasn't that they weren't happy with her performance and felt they needed to recast her. It was more on her end not coming back.
Again, that's a
which
rumor.
is such a
I don't
shame.
know if that's like official, but
there were a ton of rumors about like the Scientology situation in Hollywood, right? Kind of, yeah.
Because I thought she was perfectly fine. That might be one of her best roles ever.
Yeah,
she
was very,
so
she played very innocent, but also like kind of like strong when she needed to be, right? Like
she was brave, brave, but noticeably scared
with
of a very scary situation.
Yeah, she was protecting Joffrey, right? So
exactly.
Weird.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Yeah, Joffrey's the one.
Yeah.
I told my friends about you, but they all laughed. But yeah, so Metascore, Kev, what are we looking at here?
I gotta say, like, this just shows the strength of Nolan's filmography when you see how low some of these scores are. IMDb fans gave it an 8.2. So a good score, but 6th on the list. It got a 70% Metacritic score, which, again, a really strong score from the toughest critics in the biz, but that puts it at 6th on that list as well. Rotten Tomatoes score of 84%, a little lower than I expected there. That's about 5th on the list. So again, this is right in the middle, towards lower end of the middle. But Flickster audiences, another 94%. So ties it with Memento as his top-ranked movie. Wow. We might just see one more film score a 94% from the Flickster audiences, but who knows? Nice. But again, very well received. But it just goes to show you how strong his filmography is, that it's so far down.
Amazing.
Cool.
So after Batman Begins, Nolan takes a break. Now, the thing to know about the whole Batman trilogy is that he wasn't signed to do 3 movies. He said he wouldn't come back unless he had a story to tell. And I think for Batman Begins: The Dark Knight, he obviously did have a story that he wanted to tell, and I think he had an outline at least, but he did want to do a movie in between before he moved back into that sort of very immersive studio system style. So in 2006, we see the release of The Prestige. So after a tragic accident, 2 stage magicians engage in a battle to create the ultimate illusion while sacrificing everything they have to outwit each other. This, of course, stars Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Scarlett Johansson, written by Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan as well, and, of course, directed by Christopher Nolan. Guys, who wants to start? Kev, I think I would like to hear your opinion of Prestige.
This is the movie. As much as I enjoyed Batman, it still wasn't like, now who did that? But this was the movie where I just fell in love with the kind of storyteller that Christopher Nolan is. This is the movie that made me go back and watch Memento, because I wanted to see more of what this guy had done before. This movie, this was one of those 0 trailers, don't know much about what's going on sort of movies. Yes. And so to leave the theater after this one, just my mind was blown. The twists, the turns, the fun of it all. I was hooked on this one from start to finish. And it's far better than that other crappy magic movie that came out the same year, The Illusionist.
Yes, I wanted to mention that, right? Like, you talked about the Howard Hughes movie not coming out because of The Aviator, and then here comes out The Prestige, and even though The Illusionist, literally in my mind, I'm like, that's the same movie. Like, I've seen that movie. I've seen The Illusionist.
People confused the two a lot. I remember I was talking to someone about The Prestige, and they were like talking, oh yeah, Edward Norton's in it. I'm like, no, that's The Illusionist, right? Because they were so close in release, right? I think they were only like a few months apart and might have overlapped in theaters at the same time, if that's my recollection. If not, it definitely was the same year. Right, so
and it was 100% the same year. It was within months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
For me, being dumb 16-year-old kid at the time, like Nolan wasn't on my radar as Nolan. I liked Batman obviously, but I never really thought of Nolan that much. So I actually saw The Prestige, believe it or not, like a couple of years later at my church. Oddly enough, like we had a youth group movie night, and I'm like, we're watching it, and we're asking our pastor, we're like, why are we watching this in church? But whatever. It was honestly, I think it's probably his most underrated film, in my opinion. I don't think it gets enough love. I don't think people think of it enough when they think of Christopher Nolan.
think
It just,
so.
to me, I do not.
No, I agree with you there, Nate. I agree with you there. I don't think it's on enough. It's close enough to the top of people's lists when
Yes.
they're naming off their favorite Nolan films.
It
I
needs
think
to be
it's-
higher.
Metacritic will tell us those numbers in a little bit.
There's some interesting things with the score, but we'll discuss a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
Certainly. Wait, I'm just wondering, did the
Yeah.
church show you this movie to show you the dangers of science? You know, like, they were
Maybe
warning
that
you
was
about,
it.
Right?
Maybe that was it. I don't.
And
Honestly,
there's
I
only
don't
one
know.
kind of magic you can believe in, Nate.
For our youth groups, we were pretty chill. We weren't, it was pretty
Awesome.
cool. But
Awesome.
but no. Honestly, the cast in this film, like you've got 3 superheroes, Gollum and David Bowie
Yeah.
in this movie. Like, how do you get better than that?
Yeah,
Like,
no, the cast is on, and Michael Caine, who actually of all of his like Christopher Nolan appearances, like this
Yeah.
one served one of probably the most influential roles. He affected these characters deeply. He sets the tone for this movie, giving us an explanation to the 3-act structure of a magician, of a magic trick, being the pledge, the turn, and of course the prestige. And in many ways, Nolan takes this 3-act sort of magician structure and implements it in his film through the
So
narrative
cool.
of the storytelling. And he's a magician on his own. Like he puts things in plain sight. And because you're looking over here, you're not looking at what you should be looking at, right? Just like
Right
a
in
magician
front of
would.
your eyes.
Exactly. And I think that's the brilliance of Nolan. He's able to implement a magician's sort of hand in his editing and storytelling with this film. It's fantastic.
I mean, you speak about magicians and magic tricks. I mean, I think, like the idea of crafting worlds that are so believable and yet so, like the fact that it ends up like there's the cloning technology at that time is one of those things that like I didn't even blink an eye at. Going back and thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, obviously, like that seems pretty far-fetched that there would be the ability to clone people. But
Hey, but at the same time, if Tesla hadn't been held back,
Right.
and had been able to work his scientific genius, who knows what
We
he
could
would
have
have
had
actually
cloning.
been developing. Who knows,
But
But no, I agree with that point. Sorry, just that he made the unbelievable
So
of course.
much.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's honestly, I haven't seen it in so long, just like you, Justin. Like,
Yeah, this is one I watch every like few years or so. It's one, if I saw it on TV, I love the restart feature that TV has now. But if I'm skimming through the TV guide and it's there, restart, I'll watch that.
Nice.
And now obviously the twists towards the end are a little easier to spot now. But that first time through, just like
Yeah.
the reveals of how these things were being done was so amazing, so well done.
I think the first time I realized that there was a twin was like mind-boggling to me. Like I was like, "What?"
yeah,
It's
And
like
then-
an oh
And then it just made sense because like
moment.
Rebecca Hall's character, who's also in this film, who has a real emotional presence, from what I remember. Like I remember watching it. I think it was the second or third time where she would always make reference to, "Oh, today you love me. Today's a day that you don't love me," and it almost makes you wonder who's who, right? Who's is it? The
Well,
twin?
going back,
Right,
going
yeah.
back now, you can
Sure.
tell which
Yeah.
brother it is, and
Yeah, yeah.
but it's so neat that he shows you what's happening throughout the movie, like how the tricks are being done.
Yeah.
But you don't pick up on that because it's, again, like you said, it's that sleight of hand and the diverting your attention to other things going on. It's just so many brilliant little things in this movie that make it so good.
As we were talking about with Insomnia and Batman Begins, these are a little bit more traditionally, they're narratively driven in a Nolan style, but they don't have that sort of, fragmented narrative, we're not following. But here we get this sort of like, we see it and then we see what would have happened, like the sort of behind the scenes, if you will. And that kind of creates that sort of displacement of time. And I think that's kind of like what I was saying with Insomnia. Like, even though, there was things that were happening, he's found a way to still implement these visuals that kind of create displacement of time, so that you don't know what's current and what's not. Right. So, but as we kind of reach deeper into his repertoire, we're going to see more and more of like that sort of convergence of those
Into
sort
the
of styles.
weird.
Into the weird. There you go. Awesome. Kev, you got those Metascores?
Well, so this one's kind of the opposite of Insomnia, where people love this movie, but the critics weren't as hot on it. Prestige got an 8.5, IMDb fan score ranking it 4th, so the top tier of the middle. But it was a 66% meta score, so 7th out of 8 there, second worst reviewed by the Metacritics. It's a 76% Rotten Tomato score, so 7th out of 8 there. Again, these are numbers because there's lots of ties, just
Right.
to be clear here. But so 76% Rotten Tomato score, so that puts it 7th out of 8. But then a 92, so second out of the Flickster audience scores, favorite Nolan. Actually about 4th, but still right at the top there with people's favorite movies.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe we're a little off in saying that it's underappreciated, Nate, but I think while people love it, they don't talk about it enough, maybe.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe,
To reflect how much people do actually enjoy
'Cause
the picture.
I would say we already mentioned it. Insomnia kind of catches people by surprise in terms of it being a Nolan film, but like people will always mention Prestige. Like if I ever ask someone, what Nolan films, Prestige. is
We
always
just
in
must be asking different people.
there. Yeah, I have more pretentious friends. Don't you know that, Kev?
Oh, there
Yeah.
we go. There
Yeah,
we go.
yeah.
On that ladder of pretentiousness, they're all higher.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that concludes part 1 of our 2-part director special, taking a look at the work of Christopher Nolan. Be sure to join us for our next episode where we will conclude our retrospective look, and each of us will share our top 3 favorite Nolan films. Until then, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars is the minimum rating you can give, so please rate, review, and let us know what you think. And if you have any questions, concerns, or if we got something wrong, feel free to email us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But until our next episode, as always, we are Geekcentric and you can be too, which means you can also check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/Geekcentric. Follow us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT and check us out on Instagram at wearegeekcentric. Also, for our Twitch lovers out there, you can go ahead and join Nate on his gaming journeys at twitch.tv/NatePlaysGames. So that's it for us. Be sure to join us next week where we will conclude our look at Christopher Nolan. But until then, as we say,
Love ya.
Stay home safe, guys.
peace.